ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Oh, it's the Herd on ESPN Radio, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline and simulcast on ESPNU, baby. From Jon Gruden to actor Matthew Perry. We are packed today. So it's story time. A lot of times, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of businesses. We got to have revenues, just like last year. Last year's revenues were big. So what happened this year? Revenues aren't as big, and it's always blame the employee. Yeah, right. It's never like blame the management, or it's never like blame the culture. I'll give you an example. I worked in local news for like 14 years. And I, by and large, I was very lucky. I worked in Vegas. I worked in Tampa. I worked in Portland. I had good bosses. Tampa was pretty rough, but Vegas and Portland were great. Good friends, good bosses, good companies, good owners. But I remember one year in Portland, we got the Olympics. It was an NBC affiliate. And NBC affiliates love the Olympics because you don't have to pay for the production, but you get to charge double for spots because the ratings go up. So anytime NBC buys the Olympics, all their affiliates, they love it. It's going to be a record year, right? Because you don't have to pay for Sochi. You don't have to pay for any of it, but for 3 weeks you're going to get big ratings, and you can double what you charge companies to put ads, and you get that profit, right? So I worked at an NBC affiliate, and it happened to be in Portland, which has always done really well because we got a lot of mountains and a lot of outdoor activities. There's a lot of Olympians from the Northwest. So Seattle and Portland, Los Angeles, California, San Francisco, those affiliates do very well with the Olympics. Very, very well. A lot of the athletes are from there. And so Portland had the Olympics, and we just got huge numbers. And it just so happened one year, either it was right before or right after, but it was a political year. So we had, and local stations make a lot of money in political years. They love politics because all those politicians come to your station and say, we need ads. So local TV stations make a lot of money in political years, and they make a lot of money if they're NBC and they get the Olympics. Well, one year we had both. It was a boon. We just hit it out of the park, and we had a really good sales staff and really smart leaders, so they elevated it even more. And I remember telling my buddy Joe Donlin, he's still an anchor there, very, very talented guy. I said, hey, we better get out of here because next year the ratings won't be as good. Probably, because we had these great ratings, and I said they never last forever. And I said, secondly, this station's not going to make 30% of the income the station made. It's not going to be here. It's a non-political year, and it's a non-Olympic year. So all the big heavy hitters in our Dallas-based corporation will be like, hey, where's the revenue? Nothing you can do about it. I'm not less of a sportscaster. He's not less of an anchor. Sometimes the culture changes, or sometimes you just lose programming. I see this all the time, but you got to blame somebody, right? And it cracks me up. Everybody now in baseball is like, all right, we figured it out. The game's not as popular. It's not as fast. So it's kind of the blame game. Let's blame the hitters. Let's blame the pitchers. Has anybody ever just said, much like the nightly news in America, we just don't watch it as much? Society has changed. You don't have to wait around for the nightly news. Social media, cable television. I don't have to wait for Scott Pelley. Not that he doesn't do a good job. He's no less talented. I just don't have to wait around till 6 Eastern to watch. And it's the same thing in baseball. David Ortiz was funny yesterday. So play a couple of these bites. David Ortiz, baseball is going to give the players about 3 weeks to get used to them. But May 1st, they're going to bring in these 6 new rules to baseball to quicken the pace during the games. And it's mostly attacking hitters. And David Ortiz of the Red Sox, who's cranky and a great hitter, not happy.
So after the pitch, you got to stay in the box, basically? 1 foot.
The speed of the game.
I call that bull.
I mean, it's what's funny about it, and I've said this, it's a step in the right direction and good for you, baseball. But if you think my kids are going to run to baseball, if you go from 3 hours and 8 minutes to 2 hours and 49 minutes, that's 20 minutes. That ain't the issue. I mean, it's nice. It can help a little. It can compress it. Your bigger problem is nobody can hit during the 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or 3 hours. Football's never been longer. Ratings have never been higher. College football's added 20 minutes in the last decade. It's like a quarter. It's added 20 minutes. Ratings are higher than ever. Why? No huddle, more action. You see 140 plays. So years ago, the game had significantly fewer plays, but it was way shorter. People now, they don't care. They just like the action. By the way, hockey, more scoring, more action. Football, more scoring, more action. NBA, more scoring, more action. Games are longer. Nobody's complaining. Baseball, games are longer. Everybody's complaining. Why? Because nobody can hit when they're playing. Like A-Rod's coming back this year, right? I was joking this morning. He'll be a 225 hitter. First of all, he's an overthinker. So if he gets into a slump early, he'll go into the emotional tank. But the baseball average is 251. So what's happened in baseball? You can get all caught up in this in-game stuff, and it's driving David Ortiz crazy. But two things have happened. Much like Krispy Kreme donuts, it was the same recipe forever, but the culture changed. That's why sales went down. No carbs, more protein, Atkins diet. Before that, Krispy Kreme was sugar and air. After that, Krispy Kreme was sugar and air. The culture changed. A lot of people got fired at Krispy Kreme. Nobody's fault. It's the same with the nightly news, Scott Pelley, Brian Williams. Well, it's his fault. But the ratings are down. Why? Because we have to sit around and wait for it. Part of baseball has to come to the conclusion. If you want to shorten something, shorten the season and create urgency. But what you really have to do is you got to lower the mound and you got to expand the strike zone so more people get on base. More athletes running around the bases. Well, there'll be more walks. That's fine. More walks, more hits, more runs. It doesn't matter. It's not about length of the game. It's a nice start. You could probably drop off 20. But you got to get more action in the games. Nobody complains about the time of anything if it's exciting. If you go to a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, I went to watch Argo. That thing didn't last 90 minutes. I couldn't take my eyes off it. You complain about an hour-and-a-half movie that stinks. When I go fly cross-country, New York to L.A., Wi-Fi, TVs, I can sleep now. I don't even care about time. Flight's never been longer. I don't care. You got stuff for me to do, visual activity. So I think we get really caught up. Baseball is really caught up in this in-game time thing. Think about this. 3:03 to 2:51. That's 15 minutes. Think your kids are going to love the sport? I think they'd love it if it was 9 to 8 and there was constantly people running around and then it was 2:50. That'd make it better. But football's never been longer. NBA's never been longer. Ratings are up. Ratings are up. Heard brought to you by Regis. New way to work. Call 1-800-OFFICES. 1-800-OFFICES. David Ortiz is funny. Let me play another one of these, though. He's perennially cranky. He says, well, if you're going to fine me, it's worth the fine.
It's only a $500 fine. You think we just assume pay the money?
Well, I might run out of money. Period. I'm not going to change my game. I don't care what they say.
And he said, hey, stop blaming us. Blame the pitchers.
Every time they want to speed up the game, they focus on the hitters. How about the pitchers that go around the mound and do all that bull? How about that? Why don't you tell the pitcher, throw the pitch and stay in the mound. Don't move.
The O is entertaining. David Ortiz. Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this. Like, what's something you don't like? Like, give me a musical artist you don't like, Stanzik. Like, I'm not an opera guy, but what do you not like?
We'll go with Guar.
Okay, Guar. All right, Guar. If Guar's concerts lasted 2 hours, this is Guar. This is what you rob convenience stores to. So it's 2 hours. If I shorten the concert to an hour and a half, would it make a difference?
Still wouldn't go.
Still wouldn't go because of what's in the concert.
Are you hearing this?
Yeah, I literally, this is people grab hammers and beat themselves over the head. I can't. It's very angry. Yeah, I have a headache. It's way too early in the morning for Guar. How do you know about Guar? Is it a genre?
We reference it every once in a while. Yeah, the genre is called Screamo.
Screamo?
Yeah.
Is the genre.
Yeah, you hear them? They're screaming.
Okay, enough. Okay, enough. I got the example. I don't need any more Screamo. How about shut it off-o?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Lower the volume-o. But it's not a matter of, it doesn't matter if you shorten a concert. If you're not entertained in the capsule of the concert, it doesn't matter. Allman Brothers. I went to an Allman Brothers concert one time. It was just a dirt sandwich for 2 hours.
You're hating on the Allman Brothers?
Oh, I didn't like the audience. Didn't like my date. It was bad. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like. Oh wait, what?
What, do you hate America too?
I liked a lot of brothers. I didn't like the Allman Brothers. It just wasn't my scene. I saw Dwight Yoakam once. That was no good either. Yeah, I didn't like that at all. Tim McGraw was pretty good.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
I'm going to have Jon Gruden in 10 minutes. He's going to be great in studio. We're going to break it into two segments. We talked to him this morning for 15 minutes about a lot of different things. But Phil Simms, former good NFL quarterback who won some Super Bowls, on Sirius XM said he doesn't think it's a very good group of quarterbacks. Overall, whole group together, not a lot to get excited about. I like Phil Simms, but he thought Andrew Luck didn't have a strong enough arm. So I watch a lot of college football. Mariota is going to succeed in this league if he gets the right coach. And Winston, although he's kind of an immature kid, will succeed at some level. I think Bryce Petty's better than people think. I think he is the steal of the draft. I'll confront Jon Gruden on that. I think Bryce Petty's the steal of the draft, Baylor quarterback. I think he's going to be a really nice NFL player. Star, I don't know. Better than Andy Dalton. Not as good as perhaps Tony Romo. But Bryce Petty, to me, can play in this league at a higher level. I think he's going to be a good player. I do. And Andy Dalton's won a lot of football games. He's better than Alex Smith. He's won a lot of football games. I think he's better than Andy Dalton. He's won a lot of football games. I think he's more talented than Donovan McNabb. He's won a lot of football games. I think Bryce Petty's a real player. I think he's a real – nobody's mentioning him. I think he's a real player. We were talking about inventory. I'll give you an example of this. We're always trying to solve everything, and I've said for years, it's not the time of the baseball game. The season's so long, there's no urgency. Last year, only 9% of players, lowest in the history of the sport, played 150 games. Now think about that. Only 9% of the players played 150 games. Why? Number one is there's no more greenies in the sport. And there's an old saying in baseball. I was reading it this morning, but I've heard it time and time again, but it was in somewhere. Let me find the article this morning. It was in print. They talked about you never go on the field alone, meaning take a partner, take a greenie, take a coffee, take a Red Bull. The season's long. You're playing outdoors. It's in the heat. It's St. Louis. It's Pittsburgh. It's Kansas City. It's Texas. It's 140 on the field or 120. You don't go on the field alone. Greenies are out. So players are shot. And I've talked to them the last 2 years. Players are shot by July. And by the way, if you reduced it to 100 games, they wouldn't be as shot. They wouldn't be trying to fake it and go on the DL to get to the rest area off the interstate because there's too many damn games. But also, there wouldn't be as much travel. So you wouldn't be on a plane as often. So you shorten the season, it would create more. There's many different vibrant colors to urgency in business and in sports. One of the creations in baseball, if you shorten the season, was guys wouldn't be looking to take days off. Translation, more stars more often on the field. That's why the NFL went out and created rules so you can't touch the quarterback. Why? Because we buy quarterbacks' jerseys. More stars more often on the field. Football did it. Baseball should do it. Fewer games. You're guaranteed when you take your son, the star's going to be on the field. 160, those guys are trying to take 30 games off. They've got an ice cream headache. I'll take the weekend off. There's just too many games, and they don't have the greenies anymore. But it's a great example. I've said this. One of the things that college basketball now, the tournament is so big that you don't have to watch the regular season. It's just devoured it. College football's got a 14 playoff. The ratings surged. Everybody's freaking out. You got to have 6. You got to have 8. No, you don't. You don't want 8. You don't want 6. Small is better because small creates urgency. And let me give you an example. Jon Gruden in 10 minutes. That let's say you get to an end of a college football season and Ohio State or USC or UCLA or Oklahoma or Alabama or LSU, Michigan in a few years, they're 11-1 and they're ranked number 1 or 2. If they lose on that last week, they're out. You have 6 teams, they just go to 5 or 6. So it would take away Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, SEC championship, Pac-12 championship, USC, UCLA, USC, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, whoever. If you're ranked 1, 2, or 3, even a loss, you could still end up at 6, 7, or 8. So it creates absolute urgency. No matter if you've dominated the world, you lose that last game and you're 1, unless you've just rolled everybody, and that doesn't happen much anymore, you're out. Don't ever give up urgency. That's why I don't like the NFL going to 18 games. I'd cut it to 14. Don't give it up. Urgency is hard to create in television. We're all trying to manufacture it. You got to listen to this next segment. You got to listen to this guest. Not really. We're all trying to create urgency. When you get it, never give it up. If you can create, you've got to watch Jon Stewart's opening rant. You've got to watch Bill Maher. You've got to watch Bill O'Reilly. When you can get your arms around urgency, when you can, Matthew Perry's on today. If you can create a show that's on once a week, I got to watch Cheers. When I was in college, I got to watch Cheers. That's Thursday night. You got to watch Seinfeld. You know how hard that is to create? It's hard for Les Moonves at CBS. It's hard for the producers at this network. It's hard. Football's got it. Don't give it up. College football, you stay at 4. So what if TCU's ticked off? Good. It's good radio for 2 weeks. Our ratings in January were through the roof. Why? We were all vetching about TCU. It created urgency. That is outrageous. TCU wouldn't be complaining if they were a 16 playoff. We got results. I saw my January numbers. It exploded when TCU didn't get in. 5 days and that's what sports is all about. It's about urgency. Arguments. It matters. My highest days of the year are before the Super Bowl, after the Super Bowl, after the playoffs. Bracket Monday. Let's go. All right, Michael. Jon Gruden in a few minutes, buddy. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, Colin. Thank you for taking the call. I have to agree with your take on baseball lowering the number of games. While your point does have some validity, my issue with it is baseball has a statistical history over any other sport. That's what you look at. You look at what has been accomplished over the years. And if you change the number of games, now you're going to have one more asterisk to add to baseball's history because now there's a different number of games than what's been accomplished over the course of the season. And I think would drive baseball fans nuts because I think they hang their head on some of the statistics.
Well, haven't those already, Michael, been blown out by HGHUs for 15 years? And by the way, there used to be 120 games, then 140, then 154, then 162. So, I mean, young kids don't care about history, and that's what baseball needs, more young kids. Secondly, we've already got a million asterisks. I mean, look at the 90s. It was all make-believe. The numbers, don't look at Barry Bonds' home run years. So, it may drive diehard baseball fan crazy, but like I've always said, you've got Bob Costas. You got Tony La Russa. You got Keith Olbermann. You got those guys. Don't worry about those guys. They're not going anywhere. What you got to get is Bob Costas' kid, okay? Or Tony La Russa's grandkids. That's what you got to get to grow the sport. Yeah, it'll drive some old school baseball guys crazy. But I'm telling you, man, when you get urgency, don't screw with it. You're so lucky in any business if you can create that. We're all trying to manufacture it. College football's got it. Add 4 more teams, 6 more. You blew it. You gave it back. All right, it's called Jon Gruden Quarterback Camp. It's huge. He's in my studio next. Talking about a variety of things, the changes of football. Who do you like? Who do you not like? Jameis Winston looked like a pot roast with legs. What happened? He gained all that weight. All of it next. Jon Gruden, the Herd.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Welcome back to Herd on ESPN Radio. Jon Gruden, to me, can be as compelling as anybody at ESPN, and is joining us in the studio now. The analyst for Monday Night Football. And you have one of these quarterback camp things, and I think at ESPN, they're as entertaining as anything we do. And you're getting ready, John, to film. But first, let's start with this. Who came up with the idea for these now wildly popular quarterback camp pieces?
Jay Rothman came up with the idea. Jay Rothman produces, directs Monday Night Football, and he saw a tape that I made of Brady Quinn. When I went and worked out Brady Quinn and Jamarcus Russell, I reviewed a tape that I made for those two quarterbacks and the lesson that went into the tape. And he said, we should do a show. We should do that tape with a quarterback and make it into a little TV show, and that's basically what we've done.
It's incredibly popular. Do you find, even though you're the mentor, the teacher, do you ever learn anything from these quarterbacks?
Oh, I can't wait to learn from them. I can't wait to get Marcus Mariota in here and ask him 2 or 3 specific questions. Sometimes they're reluctant to give you the answer because they don't want to give away the secrets of the sauce, you see.
Yeah.
But off air, a lot of times they'll give it to me because some of the content that I'm giving them. So it's give and take.
John, these days you got sandwich boards up on the sideline and you move your foot and guys go in motion. It's a different world today. Is college handing NFL programs guys less capable of figuring out sophisticated offenses?
Well, it's the world we live in now, Colin. You know that. The NCAA, the CBA, the legislation of hard work is taking its toll on football. You're not as thorough. You're not executing some of the complex things that we've executed in the past. So what you're seeing now is a lot of up-tempo, no-huddle, dive options with built-in bubble screens at warp speed.
A lot of the same plays.
Yeah, you're seeing Friday night football in high school on Saturday, and you're seeing Saturday football coming to the NFL. I think a lot of it has to do with the limited amount of time that you can spend with these quarterbacks and these players. That's what you're seeing.
There is an almost, and again, the fans love it because the scoring's up and fantasy football rules the world. But you don't see, to me, when I watch New England, it feels like 8 plays running at 9 sets. It's kind of the same stuff, right?
What you're seeing is sophisticated execution in New England with Tom Brady. You're seeing Tom Brady execute very difficult things. He's changing protections. His snap count is very sophisticated. Dummy snap counts. He's using so much time at the line of scrimmage to get New England in the proper play. It's amazing. Some people can't even imagine what they're doing in New England. But what you're seeing in college, I think, is just simple daily execution.
Is that why they have an innate built-in advantage with Tom? When you play Tom and you're the opposing coach, he gets twice the playbook.
It's twice the playbook, and I'm sure Tom Brady in the next couple of weeks is going to call his players, and they're going to work out together during this idle period that the collective bargaining agreement calls for. Brady's a CEO. Drew Brees is a CEO. Manning is a CEO. These quarterbacks can install the offense. They can call the offense. They can train young players in the offense. That's why it doesn't matter who plays wide receiver for Tom Brady. He's going to make sure the execution is exact every year. And it might not happen early in the season, but when the playoffs roll around, you don't want to deal with Brady, Manning, Brees, any of these guys.
What do you mean dummy snaps? Explain that.
Well, what happens is in the huddle, they'll change the snap count. They're not just going to go up there and say, ready, set, hut. They might go up there and use a dummy snap count to make it look like they're running a play. But all Brady's doing is researching the defense. He's going to intense research to try to make sure he sees what the coverage is, what the blitz is, what's the best play to get us in. So you got to sometimes make it look like you're going through a normal snap count to get the defense to show their hand, so now you can make the corrections. And that's what Tom Brady's wonderful at.
Bill Belichick recently quoted saying, if a play lasts 2 seconds, Tom gets rid of it. He will tell us exactly what happened. We'll go back, look at film. He knew what the corners were doing, how the safety was moving up. How long does it take for a quarterback to develop that? Do all quarterbacks develop that?
Some never get that. You know, what is your eye control? I ask a lot of quarterbacks when you leave the huddle or when you're at the line of scrimmage, what are you doing with your eyes? You know, are you seeing the coverage rotate? Do you see the front and how the front coordinates with the coverage? What are you seeing? Some guys see a lot. Some guys don't see enough. Some guys aren't asked to see a lot either. But in New England's case, with a pure pocket passer like Tom Brady, they ask him to see everything.
Jon Gruden joining us, the Herd on ESPN Radio. If you have an athlete like a Kaepernick or a Russell Wilson, I don't see you as a zone read lover. I think your offenses tend to be more detailed and sophisticated. But if you got a Russell Wilson, would you implement some based on the availability of what the league allows now? Would you be, because of the new CBA as a coach, would you be forced to go less sophisticated?
I think so. I think you're looking for a quarterback that can do anything. That's what Russell Wilson brings to the table. If you can run just enough zone read where I make you defend it, that's a problem for you. It does restrict some of the blitzes that you call, some of the coverages that you want to run when you have a quarterback that can run the zone read. It's like playing 12-man football because you got to account for the quarterback now as a runner. And Russell Wilson isn't just running for first downs. He's running for touchdowns. He is a pain for defenses. But he can also drop back and throw the football. But when you're playing a 3-deep, 8-man front to stop the zone read or Marshawn Lynch down after down after down, it really helps your passing game, and that's the combination that's really worked well for Seattle.
All right, I want to talk about some of these college quarterbacks because you're going to go to that Jon Gruden quarterback camp, and I'm fascinated to this day still by it. It's maybe my favorite thing we run on this network. I'm going to throw a couple names at you. I said this a couple days ago. I don't understand why Bryce Petty at Baylor doesn't get more attention. I think he's the steal of the draft. What have you seen? What do you know?
That's pretty much how I feel. I think he has the best pure arm talent in the draft. This kid can really throw the football. I mean, tight windows, he's got a quick release, and he can push it down the field. I like Petty because he's a finisher. He gray-shirted. He red-shirted. He backed up Robert Griffin. Then he backed up another quarterback. He didn't cry and quit and transfer like a lot of people do these days. He finished. He's 24 years old. Then he went to the Senior Bowl, and he put himself in an uncomfortable environment under the center, and he said, I got nothing to hide. I like this kid a lot. He's got size, strength, and I really think he's got a big-time arm.
Now, if he gray shirts and red shirts, does that tell me he's not really that naturally gifted?
Well, he was a victim of a lot of circumstances as a young player. He wanted to go to Tennessee. They pulled the scholarship out. He had nowhere to go. He ended up getting an opportunity to go to Baylor, and they had a lot of quarterbacks. He hung in there. He gray-shirted. Then he went there, and he was fourth, fifth string as a red shirt. He executes an up-tempo offense. He's 24 years old. I think he's a finished product physically. He's just got to learn how protections work at the next level, and I got a feeling he's going to be a real good pro quarterback.
All right, John, we'll get to Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota in our next segment. Jon Gruden staying here. You know, online marketing is critical to growing a business. You need a team of experts, okay? A team. You need YP. Stands for Yellow Pages. YP.com started as the Yellow Pages over 100 years ago. They're the largest marketing agency for local biz in America. They've got over 80 million potential customers, okay? Take a free business scan. They'll measure your company's online health across online directories and search sites like Google, Yahoo, and dozens more. To start your free business scan, visit myfreeyp.com, myfreeyp.com. Jon Gruden back on Jameis Winston Mariota, and his quarterback camp show's coming up the herd.
Colin Cowherd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Jon Gruden, one of the voices of Monday Night Football for ESPN. We all know this off-the-field stuff with Jameis Winston, John. At the Combine, questions about also his body type, a slow 40 time. So you watch him, you see it on the Internet, you see it in person. Does that concern you with Jameis, or is it body shape irrelevant for a quarterback?
Well, those are concerns. When you go to the Combine, you should be at your peak physically. They're putting it on TV, Colin. I mean, they're putting a Combine on TV. You're running 40s on national TV. Okay, you're vertical jumping on national TV. You're going to interview with you know what the questions are going to be. If you don't ace the Combine, you're not really going to be a great quarterback, I don't think. You should do well. But Winston has to make sure that weight is never an issue. It can't be an issue at this position. So the way you eat, the way you train, the way you push yourself, the way you discipline yourself is critical, and I'm sure that's what teams are evaluating right now.
Marcus Mariota said it a couple days ago, reminds me of Sam Bradford coming out of college with mobility. I get a big, strong kid who can stick it. I do worry out of that college offense, unless he gets Chip Kelly, how it works. Oregon's got a system. And unless you get Chip Kelly, who kind of defines it, should I be worried? I wonder if he goes to a coach who doesn't love that Oregon offense.
I went up to see Chip Kelly to try to learn the spread offense when I got fired because of the numbers that they were producing. I got to see what they're doing up there. I mean, 47 rushing touchdowns in one season. I begged Chip Kelly, please re-sign Jeremiah Masoli. Bring him back. Bring him back. We got to have Masoli. He says, no, we'll do all right without it. They put Darren Thomas in. Darren Thomas, 50 points a game. They go play for a national championship. Now it's Mariota. It doesn't seem to matter who plays quarterback.
I know.
And Mariota is suffering, I think, because of that. However, he is 6'5". He just ran 4.52 at the Combine.
Yeah.
He's a magnificent kid. And I have a feeling with Mariota, just give him your playbook. He'll learn it. He'll survive. He'll be really good.
Jon Gruden joining us. When we get ready, I said this. The draft, I think you have to build through the draft because if you hit like Seattle has done, Pete Carroll, 4th, 5th, 6th, it's cheap labor. With a salary cap, it becomes very cheap labor. So, and then you're not reliant on free agents. You can cherry pick like the Patriots and get in Darrelle Revis. But the combine to me has always been interesting. It's a beauty contest, and some guys look good in shorts. Do we overvalue the combine? Do we undervalue the draft? Do you see them as one? Combine, draft, same thing to Jon Gruden.
Well, I never liked the combine as a coach. I hated going there watching all these workouts because you don't play the game like they play it at the combine.
Right.
But you need the raw numbers. Most importantly, you got to get the medical research done. You got to make sure this kid physically is ready to go. And then the specimen. I don't want any drug test to be positive. I don't want any problems. You discover a lot of these things at the combine, who we really want to draft based on their medical history and their off-the-field history. Those are questions that I wanted answered. And if you work for Al Davis, Colin, the raw numbers really matter because you have to be able to run fast to play for certain teams at certain positions.
John, before we let you go, the Herd on ESPN Radio, when you look at this league, high school football's never been more pass-friendly. College programs now, no huddle, pass-friendly. NFL, I like it because I like going to games with no huddles. As a coach, they say if you're out of the league 3 years, it's a different game. Do you see yourself as, now you've been so successful doing this, that maybe it's a new generation, and even if you went back with your knowledge, it's not the same game? Have you thought about that? It's a different world now.
Yeah, no question. I would never huddle again. That doesn't mean I'm going to run plays at warp speed. I'm going to go fast. I'm going to go real fast. I'm going to slow it down, and I'm going to use a lot of different speeds, but I am not going to huddle. I'm not going to run 8 or 9 plays, though. I'm still going to be able to shift. I'm still going to be able to audible. I'm still going to be able to do a lot of the things that I want to do coming out of the huddle, but I'm going to use it in a no-huddle environment because I think it really stresses the defense.
It does.
Yes.
Nick Saban can't get his units in.
Can't get them in. You can't get fresh people on the field. And it's hard to get to a lot of combination coverages or trick coverages or crazy game plan designer blitzes. It's hard to call the game you want to call as a defensive coach when an offense is relentlessly lining up at warp speed and you don't know when they're going to snap it.
SEC's not quite as dominant, haven't won national titles back-to-back. I think some of that, college football's taken away the value of the 330-pound SEC defensive lineman. I really believe that.
Or maybe the best coach in the SEC went to the Big Ten. Urban Meyer did the greatest coaching job of all time, winning a national championship with his third-string quarterback. I've never seen that before.
You know Urban.
I do know Urban. I've had a chance to meet with him. I've always respected him. Won 2 national titles for us at Florida. What he did at Ohio State, losing a Heisman Trophy candidate and then doing what he did with 2 different quarterbacks that were backups, amazing to me.
What's his it factor? What is it with him? All you guys have something. Every coach is different.
He is great at recruiting. When he gets an Urban Meyer kind of roster, I think what happened a little bit at Florida, he won the national titles, and then he wanted to be the #1 recruiting coach in the league, and I think he probably signed some players that didn't fit the Urban Meyer profile.
Good point.
And when he went to Ohio State, I think he learned a little bit from that. He's looking for guys that fit a certain profile, and he's going to build his team around those guys, and that's clearly what he's doing.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you, Colin.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
He was at the Senior Bowl NFL Combine. He was once drafted by the Padres, played quarterback at the University of Colorado, so he's been in the game. He now covers the game. I was watching one time on Fox on a weekend, and I was like, this guy's really good. His name is Joel Klatt, and he's joining us. Okay, you do your own big board, so let's just start with this. Every NFL fan's listening, Joel, and you've got your board. If I said to you, who are the 3 best college players, before we get into how they'll transition to the NFL, who are the 3 best, how about non-quarterbacks, the 3 best college players you saw this year in the sport?
I'll start up front on the defense, just because to have a great defense, I think, is part of the fabric of football. So Leonard Williams was a dominant player on the defensive side. and he was by far the best non-quarterback in the sport. He was dominant at all 4 defensive line positions. I'll start with him. A guy that not many people know about, but was fabulous, was Scooby Wright, linebacker from Arizona.
Yep.
He was one of my 3, and then Melvin Gordon, the running back from Wisconsin.
Now, do you think any of them are stars at the NFL level?
I think Williams and Gordon will be stars. I don't know about Scooby. He's a little undersized, and he's not in the draft this year. He's going to be back at Arizona. But, Colin, for me, you look at what J.J. Watt does and how disruptive he is from all 4 spots on the defensive line. And I think that Williams can have a similar impact. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as J.J. Watt is, but he can disrupt the game on any down and distance. That's what's special about him. A lot of guys can get to the passer, in garbage time or on a for sure passing situation. But when you can do it on any down and distance and be dominant, I think you're going to be a special player. And Gordon, to me, is kind of the perfect combination of DeMarco Murray and Jamal Charles. I think he's a special guy. And as much as people want to say that the running back is devalued, I just think we haven't had a first-round skilled player at that position until this year, and I think Gordon's going to be a great player.
Fox Sports college football analyst Joel Klatt just had the combine. We will have the draft. Do we take too much? I mean, you had a very good career in college. Do we take too much from the combine? Are we spending too much time on guys and their vertical jump? Do you remember, were you invited? Do you remember your moments?
I wasn't invited. Unfortunately, I had an injury. I had a concussion the last game of my career, and I wasn't able to get cleared for the Senior Bowl and then subsequently the Combine. So, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. I think that we put way too much into it as fans and the way that we cover it. But I will say that the NFL teams, save for a couple of organizations, and you and I both know who they are, but save for a couple of organizations, these teams go there with the full purpose of having a thorough vetting process in the medical arena and in the interviews. And that's really what they're there for. What these kids do for us, on the NFL network, running their 40s, and all of that is just essentially icing on the cake. It confirms what these teams already knew or what their suspicions already were for these players. So as far as stock up, stock down based on a 40 time, I think that we put way too much into it. But that's more of a fan and media-based thing than it is the NFL organizations.
You talk to coaches. You look at film. You played the game. When you put your board together, is there a player that's rising on the board fastest or perhaps falling on the board fastest?
Yeah, I don't think there's a guy out there that has fallen precipitously this year like we've maybe seen in the past, but there is one guy that was on a prominent team, ranked in the top 10 in the country to start the season. No one talked about him. They had a decent year, probably not as good as what the expectations were. Still no one talked about him. And then all of a sudden he gets to Mobile and was dominant at the Senior Bowl, which I do think people put a lot of stock into because it's football. You got pads on, you're playing the game, you're playing the sport, and you're fighting a learning curve based on the systems that you're being taught. But the player I'm talking about is Owamabeo Odighizuwa, the defensive end from UCLA. I think he's a special player. He looks like Tarzan. I mean, my gosh. The guy is cut up. He's fast. He's physical. He was asked to play defensive end in the 3-4, which doesn't lead to a lot of production, which is why we weren't talking about him during the course of the season. But he's a very good player. I think he can play 4-3 or 3-4 defensive end. I think he's going to be a guy that not only makes a roster, but could make an impact in his rookie season.
You saw a lot of Pac-12 football on Marcus Mariota and Brett Hundley. Hundley, to me, is not accurate enough. Mariota, I think, has got all the tools, but I do think because of his college game, he would be better served to go to a Chip Kelly. Do you have any doubts with Mariota? Is there anything that does concern you? Because he's obviously big, he's fast, he won a lot. Is there a concern for a guy that played the position about Mariota?
Yeah, there's no question. When you only take 5 snaps from under center, that's concern because the game is still played from under center for the most part. I know that there are guys that are taking the majority of their reps from the shotgun, and that's all well and good, but it's still a game that you've got to control and learn, and your baseline, your foundation has got to be from under center to play the quarterback position. Colin, that's where you dominate the game the quickest from if you're a quarterback. That's where you control the game, manage the game. And then, and only then, can you step back and say, now I'm going to do the same thing in shotgun. It's very difficult to go from shotgun down to center, but it's much easier to go from center back to shotgun. That's my one concern. 5 snaps is not enough. Just to give you a little frame of reference, Jameis Winston took over 230 snaps from under center. Sean Mannion from Oregon State, Colin, took over 500 snaps from under center. So 5 is a bit alarming for Mariota. And then as far as Hundley goes, you're exactly right. Your observations are 100% on. He was not accurate on easy throws, which is the most concerning part. When you're not accurate down the field in tight windows, I think a lot of the NFL teams can say, well, you know, I'm a better coach than their coaches, and I'm going to make this guy a better player. But when you're not accurate on open throws, that's a bit alarming. And then the sacks. He took so many sacks that were on him. You know, it was blocked properly. There was a free rusher. He's got to throw hot on, manipulate the system to get the ball out, and he was unable to do so. And that's probably the most alarming thing. He comes out early. I think he's going to have a hard time being drafted in the second round.
Jameis Winston, you have him below Mariota. What do your sources say? I mean, there's obviously stuff that I know that's just broadcast nationally, but you have Jameis below Mariota. Why?
Well, this game, let me bring up, Tom Brady for a second. And you think back to the year, and I know it's been well chronicled. You talked about it at length, but the ebbs and flows of an NFL season at that position are like, sunlight and shade on Mount Everest. It's so drastic that you've got to be an even-keeled person in every area of your life. You can't have the messy locker, the Bull Durham line about mold on your shoes. And Jameis has been so inconsistent in his personal life going all the way back to high school. I find it hard to believe that all of a sudden he's going to be able to deal with the fact that on 1 week, everybody in America wants to run him out of town, and then 4 weeks later, he might be the best quarterback in the NFL. That swing is ridiculous, and coaches are not looking for a guy that'll ride the stock market. They're looking for a guy that's just going to sit there and be the same every single day, whether he's the greatest in the world or the best in the world. And Brady was that example. Run out of town after the Kansas City game, everybody thought he was totally done. And then he wins a Super Bowl when he's not even on the field, when Malcolm Butler picks that ball off, and he's the greatest to ever lace him up. So that would be the most alarming part for me, and that's why I've got him below Mariota. And it's all personality and judgment and inconsistency driven.
Drafted by the Padres, played college football at Colorado, now an analyst and a great one for Fox Sports. We'll bring him on. Joel Klatt. Great talking to you for the first time, Joel. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, man. Big fan.
You bet. Thanks, man. Joel Klatt. Knows his stuff. Terrific college football eye. Did a lot of West Coast stuff. And remarkably on this show, we do occasionally acknowledge that California is a state. We have been known to do that from time to time. There is life west of Pittsburgh at this network. Matt Perry, speaking of Cali, is going to be on. Excited to talk to him. He's got a new hit show. I'm not just going to say it right. He doesn't know it yet. I'm just going to say it right now. It's a hit show. Did very well. New York Times likes it. L.A. Times, all the reviews are good. Did very well early, and CBS put it in the right spot. There you go. I had a conversation yesterday. L.A. kid, he's a sportscaster here from Los Angeles, Laker fan, and he told me, he said, they're not going to win a title in my life. It's over. And I was like, whoa, that's harsh. He's like, they're not going to win a title. He goes, it pains me to say it. They're not going to win a title in his life. But let me ask you, does Rondo, being Rondo in Dallas, potentially give the Lakers a life preserver? That's next. The Herd on ESPN Radio.
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Actor Matt Perry in about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. It's interesting. I was reading thebiglead.com, and he was talking about how do you rebuild the Lakers. And it's you get to a point where, like the Lakers and the Knicks, the Celtics have a bunch of draft picks. The Sixers have draft picks. But, I mean, you talk about these teams that don't have anything to get. They don't have anything to give to get. And it's funny because the big lead was talking about Rondo and Carlisle have blown up, and it could be a great thing for the Lakers because he hangs in Los Angeles. Rondo's got friends on the West Coast. He's pretty chummy with Kobe Bryant. And the rumors about Rondo and the Lakers, in the last couple of years, it's been out there. So if the Lakers could get Jahlil Okafor, who I think from Duke would be very good, they've got Julius Randle. But what's interesting, if you got Rondo in the West, and I don't think Rondo's a top 5 point guard. I don't. He can't shoot. But I do think he's good defensively. He rebounds. He's tough. He's physical. And at this point, Byron Scott would let him run the offense. And I think he could handle. He's got the kind of personality he could handle Kobe. Kobe's there one more year. But it's funny, if you look at free agents, LeBron's a free agent next year. This summer, here's the big free agent class. LeBron, not leaving. Marc Gasol, not leaving. Aldridge, not leaving. Those are great players. They're not leaving. Kevin Love could leave. I could see it if they got upset by Chicago in the East or got upset in the East and Love's just tired of it and it implodes. Goran Dragic in Miami, he's staying there. There's some Paul Millsaps. I think Jimmy Butler's very interesting in Kawhi Leonard, but their teams can match the salaries, so you're not going to get Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler, who I love, but you can have an offer sheet, but their teams can go and match it, and so you're not going to get them. Chicago's not letting Jimmy Butler go, and San Antonio's not letting Kawhi Leonard go. There's just not that much out there. I think a really interesting player is Robin Lopez, who's an unrestricted free agent, and if you go look at Portland's record when he's healthy, you can't beat them. They're a really good team. So you got Julius Randle, broke his leg, but you got him. If you get lucky and get an Okafor, and it wouldn't take that much luck because the Lakers right now, they're awful. I mean, they're awful. They could lose. They could go on a 10-game losing streak, and you wouldn't be surprised. You get Okafor, you got Julius Randle, you go out and get a Robin Lopez, you are set. And Rondo comes, you're pretty formidable. Now, I don't think you're going to win a title with that, but there's a difference between not winning a title and at least being a playoff team and being viable. Lopez, Okafor, Julius Randle, and if Rondo came over, that's interesting. I'm not in the East. That's a playoff team. In the West, it's close. But right now they're 15-41, 3-7 over their last 10, laughably unwatchable. And so that. But it's interesting. I had a friend yesterday that said to me, and he's a diehard NBA guy. He knows the analytics. One of the smartest guys at this company, and he said to me, he goes, "I don't think you're going to win a title in my lifetime." And I think Mark Cuban touched on this on our show. The one thing that hurts the Lakers, and it really hurts these big market teams, the NBA is a star league. You just don't need to go to the big cities anymore. You just don't. You don't have to go to the big cities anymore. You can be a superstar in Houston, Portland, OKC, San Antonio. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The other thing that jumped out at me that, and I don't know how many people follow this story, but recently the Milwaukee Bucks waived their center, Larry Sanders. He had some anxiety and depression issues, some mood disorders. And it's interesting because when he was quoted, he came out and he said, "Listen, I'm an artist, I'm a dad, I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I'm a musician. Sometimes I play basketball." And when he said that, I thought it was very interesting because we don't like our athletes to really be an artist and a musician and a writer and really talented. We like him to be Brett Favre. We like him to be Brett Favre. We like him to be all football. I remember years ago, Mike Dunleavy was talking to me about this. And he was saying that Grant Hill came out of the draft the same year Glenn Robinson did. Remember the big dog, Glenn Robinson? And a lot of people, Robinson went number 1 and Grant Hill went number 3. Same draft, mid-90s, 94. And people preferred Robinson because, he's a little bit of a knucklehead. Grant Hill was brighter kid, more refined. You knew he was going to have a much better post-basketball life. He just, and by the way, we're seeing that now. Grant Hill's going to network, broadcasting, general manager. I mean, he's going to be like Shane Battier. He's going to have a million options. But one of the reasons that NBA teams preferred Robinson was he had no life outside of basketball. Like, he didn't have hobbies. His hobby was shooting a basketball. He didn't have any hobbies. And it drives people crazy when guys are like Tiki Barber. And they've got other things to do. And it's interesting because we would celebrate Arian Foster not living, breathing for football, you'd think. We would celebrate Martellus Bennett being really funny on the air, being a musician, being an artist. But in the end, let's be honest, fans want wins. And if you're an artist and a painter and it takes time away from practice or film room, they're not interested. We want our athletes to show up and, like Brett Favre, live, breathe, sleep, eat football. You're listening to The Herd on ESPN Radio, available in the sports section on the free TuneIn radio app. Also, this morning we got into a discussion before Matt Perry comes on, the actor, in about 8 minutes. We got into this discussion this morning about A-Rod. Nobody can hit in baseball anymore. It's the reality of it. No greenies, bigger staffs, more guys throwing mid-90s, no HGH. I'm reading this story. Joe Girardi said yesterday, we all know that A-Rod's mostly going to be a DH, but Joe Girardi said it'd be nice if he could play some first base. And A-Rod's a good enough athlete. He could learn how to do it. But we do realize, right, that he's 39, going to be 40 midsummer. Bad hips, no HGH, looks puffy, hasn't played a full season since 07. And defensive alignments in full swing. You do get that A-Rod's going to be a 230 hitter. If you could get, Stanzik, if I said to you this, if I said to you this year, A-Rod hits 12 jacks and you get 52 RBIs and he's a 251 hitter, I would be overjoyed.
Best case scenario.
Best case scenario. A dozen home runs, 50 RBIs, and 245, 50. That is best case scenario. I mean, you know, everybody's like, this A-Rod situation, I don't think he's going to get 300 at-bats. I think if he struggles early, he'll go into the tank. He said he's just happy to be on the field.
You know, whether Joe wants me to play third base, first base, DH, ball boy, I'm all in, whatever it takes.
If he gets 200 at-bats, I'd be shocked. 200 at-bats. I think he's a 230 hitter. He's going to end up with like 4 home runs, 26 RBIs if he makes it. You'd be overjoyed for a dozen home runs. Matthew Perry. Matt Perry's got another hit show. And a huge sports fan. And a real athlete. Yeah. He'll be joining us next. The Herd on ESPN Radio.
Colin Cowherd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Well, you can count, you know, on a couple of hands, like TV shows in America that have changed the game and lasted for years. And Friends was one of them. And I've grown up, you know, I'm older. I've seen Mary Tyler Moore. I go back to MASH, Cheers. Then you get into about 20 more shows, and Friends is one of them. It's kind of American TV royalty, and one of the stars is Matthew Perry, an actor who's a hell of an athlete. He was a ranked tennis player as a junior, played some hockey as well. I've had friends who have played celebrity hockey matches with him. He's a very good athlete. How are you today, Matthew?
I'm doing great, Colin. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. You don't want to get paralyzed watching old stuff. It was a cartoon. There was Broadway. There was an old show. It was one of my favorite growing up, The Odd Couple. How much do you watch, and how much of you, Matthew, is, I don't want to get paralyzed by what other people did in this role?
Well, I was a huge fan of the movie and the TV show, so one of the big challenges was to not do a Walter Matthau impression the entire time because the role's been played so well. So the key to it is to update it, modernize it, and sort of bring my aspects of my own personality to the part. And it was really fun playing Oscar Madison because he's just a slob and a mess, and I didn't have to spend too much time in hair and makeup.
Very good. In sports, when you're an athlete, you know results like a stand-up comedian. You can judge results immediately. When you're an actor and you're part of a project, it's a process. This is getting good reviews. It got good numbers early, right? Demos. Is there a moment you knew, okay, it's not like comedy, it's not like sports, it's a process, but is there a moment in this process you knew this is going to work, this clicks?
I think the time I was involved in this show from the ground up in the development process and co-wrote the script and was involved in all the casting. And when we knew we had a show was when Tom Lennon came in as Felix Unger. He I still can't tell whether he came in character or whether it's just him. But when we knew that we had good chemistry, it was when we knew we were onto something very special here.
Yeah. You know, we were saying this morning, when you're on an iconic show, it's certainly enriched your bank account and certainly helped, elevate your name throughout Hollywood. But a lot of times with actors, Matthew, you know, people don't want to be defined by one role. If somebody comes up to at an airport and says, Chandler Bing, does it bother you? Are you cool with it? How do you feel?
It's very nice. It's very nice that people love the show, especially the Friends is now on Netflix, so we're getting recognized by a group of people who are far too young to have ever been alive while we shot the show. So it's very confusing to them because they recognize me and just wonder why I look so old.
Yeah. You are a jock at your core, right?
I am. I play a lot of sports.
And you're still active, right? Like, do any of that physicality help you in acting, your competitive drive? Does sports ever work for you in front of the camera?
I think a competitive drive is important in sports and in acting. You want to try to be as funny as possible, and I think there's a part of us that wants to be the funniest. So my competitive nature serves me well in both.
So you're dual citizenship, Canadian, go to Los Angeles, which is a better hockey town than people think. Are you a Kings fan?
I'm a gigantic Kings fan. I fly to road games. I went to every single game of their Cup run in both in 1993 and in 2012.
Wow. Do you go back to Marcel Dion those years?
Yeah, the Triple Crown line, Charlie Simmer and Dave Taylor, sure.
Wow. You're bringing A game today. So now who when the Kings won a couple years ago, you're not just you play the sport. When they've risen over the last few years, why? What makes them great? As a non-hockey guy, why are they great?
Well, it's really tough to figure it out. I mean, their Cup run in 2012 was just impossible. They got into the playoffs on the last day of the regular season. They were the 8th-ranked team, and in every single series, they went up 3-0. So it came out of nowhere. They're a young team. They play very well together. They're very eager. Andrei Kopitar is a great goal scorer, and they're led well by Dustin Brown. And Jonathan Quick just had an incredible year that year. Nobody could get the puck past him.
Yeah. We were talking this morning about binge watching. Actor Matthew Perry, The Odd Couple, Thursdays, 8:30 Eastern, CBS, who my buddy Eric Tannenbaum, who is on this project as well, we both know, told me about 6 months ago. He goes, this is going to work. This is a real show. I binge watch House of Cards. Okay, that's my binge watch show. Like, what do you watch? Are you more movies? Are you more television, Matthew?
I watch a lot of sports on TV. I watch The Newsroom, I love, and Homeland, I love, and House of Cards. I'm right there with you on that one.
Do you ever listen to sports radio?
I do from time to time.
Yeah, it's a don't go too long there. It's psychotic. It's not a healthy listen. Before we let you go, Matthew Perry, The Odd Couple, why are actors now, and I don't know if this is a trend, and maybe it's just because there's more opportunities, but it seems like more actors are moving toward TV, whether it's pay-per-TV or broadcast. Why? What's the trend in L.A.?
I think people like a steady gig, and if you're doing 4-camera TV like The Odd Couple is, it's the closest an actor can come to any sense of normalcy in their lives. It's basically a job that starts at 10 o'clock and goes on till about 3 o'clock, and then you're home by 3:30. So I think that's why people want to do it.
How many weeks a year?
We just shot 12. We shot 12 episodes, so over a period of 12 weeks, and now they're just starting to air. The second one's on tonight.
Okay, now I have to ask the ultimate cliche question, which you've been asked a million times, and my staff wanted to ask this. Okay, and Friends. Okay, listen, you guys were all waiters, and you had this $30,000 a month grotto upstairs in this building. Didn't you ever ask the producers, how do we afford this space?
Well, there was no fourth wall.
Oh, so there was draft issues among other problems.
Yeah, so it made it a lot cheaper because people could see right in.
Okay, The Odd Couple, Thursdays, 8:30, CBS, Matthew Perry. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot, Colin.
You bet. That explains everything. They didn't have a fourth wall. Of course. Am I wrong on that, though? Like, every time I watch something with my wife, she's like, okay, I don't. Like, the other night, here's the other thing she was watching the other day. Let me see if I can say this on the air. They could be a big sponsor. Hold on. There was a restaurant chain that could be an enormous sponsor, and it's a okay restaurant chain. And the commercial starts, and it's all these great-looking people. She goes, when's the last time you walked into a restaurant like that and saw 7 people that were that attractive? And I said, never. But I live in Connecticut, so there's like 8 in the whole state. But she said, look at that. Like, nobody walks into a medium, marginally priced restaurant, and it's like everybody's a model. Can't you have a lumpy guy at the table? Receding hairline, comb over, you can see his belly with his T-shirt. Like, that's what America is. And so with Friends, it was always, come on, give me a break on this.
It kind of seemed like he was prepared for that question.
It kind of does. The line was too good.
Well, you've been saying it for months, so maybe he listens.
Yeah, all the time, sure. Yeah, you bet. All the time. Good to see Bill Simmons. Can I play the Bill Simmons bite from yesterday? I said this yesterday. Everybody thinks the Bulls are going to go into the tank because of Derrick Rose being out, and I've said this for years. I think Derrick Rose is overrated. I think he's a fireworks show. He's not sustainable. And Bill Simmons came on yesterday, and he watches more NBA than I do, and he agrees.
I really feel like they're going to be better off without Derrick Rose. I watch basketball every night. He paralyzes that team. Yeah. He's a jump shooter, doesn't get to the line anymore. And now they're going to be able to pound the ball down low, and the ball's going to move around, and they're going to be better off.
Yes.
I'm not hating on Derrick Rose. I'm just telling you what I'm watching. It's my opinion. If you want to have an opinion on that opinion, that's fine.
Thank you. If LeBron James leaves your team, you're a lottery pick. If he comes to your team, you're a top 5. Derrick Rose is going to leave the Chicago Bulls, and they're going to be fine. And they're going to end up in the Eastern Conference Finals. You watch. They're better than Atlanta. What's the old saying, gun to your head? Would you take Chicago or Atlanta? Chicago or Toronto? Chicago or Washington? Chicago or Milwaukee? You take Chicago. You take LeBron off the Cavs. They're out in the first round. I don't care what that. You take LeBron out of the Cavs, it's Kyrie Irving shoots too much and kind of playing his own game, Kevin Love on a wing. Then J.R. Smith goes back to being kooky J.R. Smith.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast.